Hey Minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on today's video, I'm taking a break from my what if videos to get a few top 10 videos out of the way because they've been on my mind, not because I can't find my other page of notes on episode 5. The full title of this video is Top 10 Simple Abilities That I'm Shocked Don't Exist in Smash Up, and the fact that they don't exist is gaslighting me because I swear that they do. Apparently that is not a mobile-friendly title. This video was inspired by Noble Steed, one of the Night double features, because it's a very simple ability, yet it hadn't appeared as a double feature before. The ability has appeared, just not in that context, and I swore that it has. It is so simple, it's the type of ability you could have in a core set. Now I'm the Bandit, and I love creative, expressive abilities. In fact, I believe it is the key to balance, because it gives you much more flexibility when trying to make cards have the appropriate weight in their deck, rather than inadvertently power creeping every card. But there is a place for simplicity, and it's funny how we approximate some of these abilities, but only by going past them in terms of their complexity. To the best of my knowledge, none of these abilities exist as I described them, and if they do, that's evidence of the gaslighting I described earlier. So here are 10 contextually specific abilities I'm shocked don't exist. You can build entire factions around some of these ideas, and I'd be fine with the game using these ideas, but if you want to use them in your custom factions, I am legally obligated to remind you of our custom content initiative. The first is a direct breakpoint increase. Increase the breakpoint of a base by X. We've seen massive breakpoint reductions. We've seen moderate reductions. The closest we've seen to an actual increase is very heavy-handed in the form of monsters, and turn it up to 11. It's a shame that monsters dominate this area with all their control-based complexity, because a standard breakpoint increase is actually a very elegant stall tactic. It's a way of slowing down the game without feeling like you are attacking a person or their cards. They just need more. And you can apply it on other players' turns or combine with self-cancellation. The ability is simple to express, easy to comprehend, and fits in well within the game. This would be a good ability for a recruit, giving you presence but no power creep. This naturally leads into the second card, which could be in the same faction, but doesn't have to be. A card that grants power and scales for the breakpoint. Smash Up doesn't have many examples of for every card, and I think that is because it assumes that this is hard to do, but it's not. The examples seem to be for every one, get X, like +2 power for every other action with Armory. And the closest we come I think is the Wizard Titan that gives you a power for every 2 cards, but it's never more than 2, and it certainly doesn't tie into the breakpoint. This type of card scales well because it scales with the need for that power. 5 power on a 25 breakpoint base is certainly reasonable, and it reaches augmentation level on some realistic levels. It adds strategic value because it may mean saving it later for a bigger payoff versus winning now, and it rewards knowledge of the base deck. But maybe that's the reason why we haven't seen it at all. Ironically, the other card off the top of my head that comes to mind is the Factory, which may not be the biggest endorsement for these type of abilities. I could see this being a double feature action, but also a strong single feature in the right context. My third card operates on a similar premise, but solves a key problem that plagues playtesters. How does a card scale in multiplayer? There is no card that gives a minion power for each other player in the game, like +2, +4, and +6. What makes a card better in 4-player? This answers that. It is still always relevant, it's just not as good at lower player counts. And the truth is, factions have enough examples of being better in 2-player. It's time for a faction to be objectively better in multiplayer, and this is a clear way to do it. The closest we come is Honor Thy Ancestors for its recursion, but you may never see those cards again. Pot of Wisdom needs its multiplayer scale to be practical, but no one does this for power. And in multiplayer games, you should have less turns and therefore less chances to draw cards, so the scale in power is both justified and mitigated at the same time. It's an easy to understand increase that is easily calculated, and the natural cap at 6 is perfectly acceptable. This, like the previous card, could function as a single or double feature. The fourth card is a minion who has been greatly surpassed many times, but no minion actually does this in its purest form. The on-play ability to move one of your minions to here. Most of the time, movement comes from your actions. When it comes from a minion, it's usually self-movement or conditional movement, even talents or mass movement. But what if I just want to pivot and have that play come from my minion slot, especially with on-play timing, which has its advantages for specials and out-of-turn plays? The closest example is Rickroll, which requires lower breakpoints, or Twister, which power caps the movement, adds both directions, and can target any player. But for uncapped allied movement, there is none to my knowledge, and that's a shame. I could see this being an easy 3-slot ability, but it could have been Pinky instead of a depreciated Starlight. This should make a very simple but good minion ability. The next action is one that really resonates with me, a simple power activation talent. Talent. This minion gains 2 power, or 3 power, or Xpower, etc. We've seen plenty of terminal actions, we've seen minion modifiers that permanently grant power, we've seen power counters. But there is a real shortage of power activation modifiers which give you the same payout, but not in exploitable form. The closest we come to is the touch, which really complicates it by giving the minion the talent and cancelling other abilities. This could be an easy double feature, as I definitely value a +2 on-demand power over +3 permanent power for the reason of exploitation and the flexibility of play. I'd even love this as an heirloom-style triple feature. For card number 6, my next minion goes in the opposite direction in that it gets permanent power, but that's kind of the point. Before a base scores, this minion gains a +1 power counter. Note that this is any base. Beta 6 and various werewolf cards do something similar, but only on the scoring base. Cthulhu's Chosen does it globally, but it's only temporary, and it's very hard to pull off the double score to make it matter. Plus, it causes madness. But power counters solve that problem, allowing for a steady power increase that can facilitate catch-up strategies, come-at-me strategies, and long-term plays. You can really dig into this approach as well if you make those counters matter. This ability could apply to a 2-power minion or a 3-power minion and would align with power counters doing something different, while also providing design space in the underrepresented before any base scores category. Like movement, mass card draw tends to come from actions, but why is this? I could totally see a faction leader having a mass card draw as its on-play ability, and that's it. Having a minion with the ability to draw a card for each of your other minions here would fit nicely with the leader, because you can burst, set up, and get payoff all at the same time. It's very C-base smash base, but allows you to regenerate your hand in the context of breaking a base, rather than being caught in between. You add a known amount of power and hopefully draw an action that can finish the base off. But you also pad your lead in case you don't get the card you need. Most minions tend to draw single cards or simply cycle them, like Foolish Magician. Thus, I think the ability is worthy of a leader. My next card somewhat cheats, because this card does kind of exist historically, an ability where you draw a card during your draw 2 cards phase. Now, the legend goes that cards like Diffid's Engine and Missing Uplink have this ability. However, the literal wording of the end of the turn means that the card draw occurs after the discard, which is the biggest part of their value. And according to said legend, though the intent was for the cards to work in Phase 4 rather than Phase 5, they were retroactively interpreted to be the Phase 5 version because that's how the card read. This means that there is an opening for the original ability, and it'd be an easy double feature. These types of useful draws, whether start of turn or end of turn, avoid the discard pile and tend to appear once. Or if they appear once, they have a strict limitation. Therefore, an ability that doesn't avoid the discard can be justified as appearing twice, and without a once per turn limitation. It doesn't give you extra cards over your limit, it just accelerates your deck sifting. Speaking of which, the next logical conclusion is to increase your hand size. It's super simple and easy to understand. This ability is perfect for a 4, to appear twice and have them stack so your hand size can go to 12. This isn't an extreme increase, but every card matters, and it's honestly shocking that this ability doesn't exist. You can even go in the opposite direction and reduce the hand size of others, but I won't count that freebie. In fact, this would be my number 1, if not for my fear that the game wouldn't do it, and there is a bigger culprit. My final ability is before a base scores, a minion there has negative X power until the end of the turn. X can be 3, 4, or whatever. You have special cards that destroy minions. You have special cards that increase minion power. You have special cards that decrease minion power, but for whatever reason, they always assume that you need to knock 1 power off of each minion. What about knocking down a higher power minion to be in range of destruction? What if you just need the power reduction from a single minion? It used to be, throw on enough power to avoid a low-hanging destruction or control. Well, these abilities change that. It can be just as impactful in changing the winner on a base, while opening the door to more effects. Think of it as a reverse augmentation, something to target bigger minions. And because the base is already scoring, the loss of power makes game sense. But seriously, check out how every card reduces power as a base scores. It's always at the swarm level. The closest we come is Turn the Beat Around, which is really convoluted and hard to pull off, and certainly doesn't have the same effect. There are times to destroy, and times to lower, and times to do both, and we really need cards that facilitate the latter 2 occasions. These abilities can be expressed in a single, concise statement and are easy to understand, so much so that 84 factions later, they shockingly don't exist. Or maybe they do, and I just missed something. It's certainly plausible, but I'm relying on the ability to search for card text, and if something's worded improperly, that's not on me. Does that sound like a cop-out? Probably, but I can do the best that I can, and that's it. Which of these cards would you like to see in the game? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.